What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Between Two Nodes. Today I have Steven. Still don't know how to pronounce his last name. Lubka. Can you please correct me?
It's Lubka.
Lubka. All right, sweet. Um, might want to add your pronunciation on like your Twitter profile or something, just because you know. But no, really happy to have him here, managing director at Swan. For relevance sake, for some of the stuff that we talk about timing wise, we are currently sitting at my widget. Hold on. It's coming. Block 793 443. It is June 8th, 2023. So, don't know when we're going to post this, but things happen at a rapid pace in this environment. So, just want to throw that out there in case some of the stuff you're like, oh, well, that was wrong. Well, today it's right. So, anyway,
Everything I say is right today.
exactly. Never been wrong in my life.
Today.
Steven, IMDb version about yourself. What do you do at Swan? What do you do when you're not at Swan? Just who are you?
Yeah. I'm so happy to be on Tatum's Cave. Like I've been looking forward to coming on Tatum's Cave. That's the name of it, right? Like
Yeah,
you got the blind behind you. Like,
yeah, we'll go with that.
okay, yeah, it's been a dream. It's a dream come true.
Nice
So,
rebranding right here happening live.
so like you said, I run the private client private wealth team for Swan. So I joined Swan several years ago, basically to spin it up. So I was employee number one on the private client team, and it was basically an idea at that point that a certain demographic, largely like baby boomers and like that sort of like demographic, really wanted a more concierge experience, like coming to Bitcoin. Like they're not going to go to Coinbase or Gemini or Binance and figure out their two-factor authentication, like a limit order, right? Like they need someone to be there on the other side of the phone that they can call. And so that was kind of the thesis. We built it out. Like, I was a one-man show for a number of months. And it was extraordinarily successful. It's become a large part of the company now. People really love having that person-to-person relationship. And, I think in the space, we don't always understand exactly like how daunting Bitcoin is to the average person, especially to, people who might be like, later in their career and like, they don't want to figure out a whole new thing. They've got money. They just want to know they're doing the right thing with it. So we built that out. It's grown tremendously. Like I run that team and I also work with clients from time to time. And yeah, it's been awesome. We host events. Like we just had events down in Miami for the Bitcoin conference. We hung out there. That was awesome. So do a lot of stuff for private clients.
Yeah, I pulled up to. You said come to the Swan House. I was like, all right, whatever. I pulled up and I was like, I do not need to be here, man. Like this is way out of my price range. This building is worth more than like what I'm going to make in my entire life. But no, it was great fun though. Great finger foods as well.
Yeah.
They, it was, I had a little. I might have had a little too much. I was like moving around to different groups of people and just be like, oh, I haven't had this. Thank you. Like, but no, it was awesome. Met a lot of cool people there too. So just to get started, we're coming. I mean, we're still in what I guess you could consider this. We're still in a bear market. It's gotten a little better than what it was, but for a while, I mean, it was just death. Um, we've seen a lot of capitulation with companies that are in the Bitcoin and more, of course, crypto space. But very obviously, Swan's still here. You're still here. What? How did you survive the bear market? How are you currently surviving? And like, has any of your kind of just ideas around Bitcoin as a whole
Yeah.
changed in a positive way, negative way? Just what's been your process over the past few months?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, going through this bear market, I mean, it was a remarkable experience for me. So, when I joined, it was, beginning kind of the bull run 2020, 2021. And so that was obviously a great time. Everyone was happy. Bitcoin's going up, like everyone's making money, everyone's interested. So, as it turned, I didn't really know what to expect because a lot of these people, this was their first time buying Bitcoin. Like they'd never done it before and they'd put like large sums in, right? Like these weren't like small purchases. And, I kind of was like, I wonder how they're going to handle it. And what I was surprised by, like, it shocked me, was throughout the whole bear market, like, we have thousands and thousands of private clients. The number of people who called us to panic sell, I mean, I feel like was under 20. Maybe I'm like lowballing it like a little bit because like I don't have like direct visibility into every call that happens. Like I know me personally, like clients I've worked with, it was certainly under 10, like of like panic sell, like, oh my God, what have I done? Sell all my Bitcoin. And I was shocked by that. And I knew that couldn't be indicative though of like the broader market. So, I asked the question, like, why was that? Like, why did our clients, even people who, just knocked on our door and plowed 6-7 figures into it at, higher prices than here, like, why didn't they freak out? And, I think a huge part of it is like the education component. Like we do a lot of education. We're like on the phone with them, we're onboarding them. It's these one-on-one calls. Like it's a very different relationship than somebody wandering onto an exchange and like,
How do I
doing
do this?
something
Like,
and doubting themselves
it's
and
more
freaking
personal.
out. Yeah. Now, what we did get calls of people like wanting reassurance. That certainly happened. So
Right.
they weren't saying like, "Hey, sell," but they were saying, "Hey, like, are you still confident in this?" And we'd tell them the reasons we were, and that would bolster their confidence. And they held. And some of those calls were at 15K, right? And we're practically double that now. So they're happy they did. So the relationship and the in many ways running a Bitcoin only business, it's a slower process. Like Bitcoin only companies are more like they're sustainable and they're slower. You don't get like the sugar rush growth of crypto, like the real speculative fervor where some of like our quote unquote competitors, right? They're not really our competitors, but like the BlockFis of the world and stuff. I mean, they were making billions and billions of dollars and raising these huge rounds, but we all know how that went, right? Like, so we certainly like weren't doing the numbers that BlockFi was doing in 2021 or 2022, but we're still here and we're still operating a successful business, one that's growing. And part of it is like when you look at the business model of a lot of these exchanges, what you see is they're like, I think this is, I'd be shocked if anyone would disagree with me on this, even outside of like the Bitcoin world. Like they're incentivized for their clients to trade. I don't think anyone can say otherwise. Like Coinbase, Gemini, Binance, they are incentivized for their clients to trade. They don't want them to buy and hold. They want them to trade. That's their incentive. And like without even talking about what they're trading and like what the quality of those coins or assets are, do most people who trade make money? Like they can't. Like statistically, like you can't. Like that doesn't work in aggregate. So what happens? Most of their clients just lose money. They burn them essentially, even if they're not trying to. It's just an inevitable consequence. And so you have to constantly onboard new clients to make up for the ones that you exhausted because they lost their money trading Dogecoin or whatever. Like
the house always wins.
Yeah, exactly. Like you need new people. Like if they don't just keep depositing more dollars, and like they won't if they just lose over the long term. We have people buy and hold. Like we don't incentivize people to sell. And so our clients, while they may suffer drawdowns, they may buy Bitcoin at a high price and it drops, like the vast majority of them held the asset. They, they're still in their position. There's obviously been like a nice recovery, not maybe fully there for everybody, but those clients stay with us, right? Like they don't leave generally. Like they DCA and they add to their position. And so like we're not burning those clients, and we actually earn significantly more revenue per user than Coinbase. They've published those metrics. Our numbers are substantially higher. So like, we maybe like don't have like the number of users they do, but our people stick with us and they do more business.
Yeah, that's a good way of like framing it. Is like you don't really think about it, but like I wonder how many people have like circled through Coinbase and Binance and Femex and all of these different exchanges that are focused on trading, like, because I mean, like, whenever I did use these exchanges before I learned how to do it better, I wasn't trading. I was wanting to buy Bitcoin, and I just bought it at the worst possible rates and spreads and fees and all that. But like, I was not the customer that they were targeting. But that's a great frame of reference. So continuing on with that conversation, has anything, what you're able to share, but like, has anything with Swan's strategy, business model changed because of like, obviously you'd say that you're getting these clients, holding them, but has anything changed as far as just the overall strategy? I know that like there are some people who have been, like, some companies have been, they'll change their rates because they can't sustain them in the APYs or whatever. Obviously, we won't get into that, but or they'll offer different products that you're like, I never thought that this company would, or anything like that. Or they'll just kind of just pump the brakes, mass layoffs. There's all sorts of ways, but obviously I respect Swan for what they've done so far, and like you said, how they're still here. So has anything changed strategy-wise that is to prepare for the next bull, the next bear, or just ongoing?
Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say that something has changed, because this has kind of always been our long-term plan and trajectory. But yeah, the future looks different, right? Like the future for Swan looks substantially different. And I can't get into like too much detail on what these products are going to be, but you're going to see a lot of launches literally in the next 6 months. Like by the end of the year, if everything goes as planned, but we're very close, like I'd be shocked if that didn't happen. You're going to see like a substantial expansion of what the Swan platform is. Our goal is to create, like, on the private side, obviously I run private, like I want to build a private wealth platform, like broadly speaking, encompassing all of the things that, would kind of provide value in the Bitcoin space to, high net worth investors. But across the firm, it's not just for, our wealthy clients. Like, we're rolling out a lot that's going to be for everybody. New products, new offerings, new things that Swan does. The long-term future, the scope broadens a lot. Like when we started the company, it was basically a place to buy Bitcoin. It was an on-ramp. And, the bottom line is, in 5 or 10 years, a Bitcoin on-ramp isn't a business. Like, that doesn't exist. You're going to be able to buy Bitcoin at the ATM. Like, you're going to be able to, that's like saying that I have a business selling Apple shares. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's not a business. That's like, Bitcoin's going to be ubiquitous. And so like that can't be like the long-term trajectory. And you're going to see a substantial expansion. There's going to be, just a lot more you can do with the Swan platform, and obviously like, some angles where there's like more of a reoccurring basis for the company. I think that's those are the goals, and that's the target. And we're really close to a lot of those.
That's exciting. Ooh, I didn't know we were going to get some saucy information like that. Well, that's great to hear. And like I said, y'all are obviously here, and I think I would like to think that y'all's plan is to stay here. But
we're not going anywhere.
that's good to hear.
You couldn't pay me to, man. Like I don't say this because I'm talking to you and we're recording something, but like working with Swan, I mean, it's the best company I've ever worked with. Like just the team, the culture, the environment, it's incredibly unique. And what Corey and everyone at the company has done is like, they've just built a culture and an environment where like people can thrive as themselves. And like, I feel like, I'm probably like one of the more visible elements of this, like my Twitter presence and like everything that, I get up to and what I talk about. There's a lot I talk about that's on Bitcoin and like, if I was leading the private wealth team for, a Wall Street financial firm, like that probably wouldn't be kosher. You know what I'm saying? Like that probably wouldn't fly. But, it's been like, for me, like I'm literally just doing it because it's what I'm interested in, and like I want to share it, and I think it's beneficial for people. Like I have literally no upside to it in any sort of monetary sense. But it's also been like, it's one of the things I've learned working at Swan and like working with high net worth clients is like, you need to be authentic, and like that can be like a paradoxical recommendation for most people, because it's like, what do you mean be authentic? Like if you're trying to do that, you're not doing that, right? But like I don't mean it as some sort of tactic or like, okay, let me remember to like be authentic in this call, but like literally just like bring your whole self to it. Like you don't need to create this like work persona. I am in work mode now. And people are nervous to do that because they think, well, like it's not expected of me. I'm not fitting the script. Like they expect me to be a certain way. And obviously, like you can go way off the rails, like tactfully so. It needs to be done. But I've actually like so many of my clients, and these are like insanely successful people, very wealthy people, like they'll ask me to take a walking call with them now, or they'll ask me to like, do this. They love it. Right. And so it's been a lesson that I've learned from like, so obviously like Swan like allows me to operate in the way I do and doesn't like, I've never been told to shut up or like stop. But not only is that great for me and like I feel good, but it's actually been like incredibly well received by clients, and I think we just live in a world where like you're so starved for authenticity, and everything is a production, and every corporate communication is a shtick.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And that's one of the reasons that I initially started between two ASICs, is to kind of like I wanted to interview people that you kind of listen to, and if you are not super into what they're talking about, other people would consider just like boring. What's the funnier side? Like whether they're acting or just kind of being silly or something like that. Like, I mean, you're completely right. Like it's like we're almost programmed to be robots of who we're supposed to be, and it's like there's more to everyone that you don't see unless you allow yourself to do that. And I really like that you are like this is a weird thing to admire, but like I think it might have been yesterday or something, but several times I've seen Swan employees having healthy arguments on Twitter, not necessarily like you bitch, like I hate you, but just like this is my thought. Oh, I do not agree with that, and for this reason, yada yada, and like it's like that's I don't know why, but like that's authentic. You're not like I don't see that. I'm like, oh no, they're supposed to be agreeing with this because they're coworkers. Like obviously that's not the case, but it's like, who are you supposed to be versus who are you, and who do you believe in? Do you represent your thoughts, or do you represent a company's thoughts, something like that? But I know it's not mutually exclusive to Swan, or exclusive to Swan, but like I don't know. It's something you often see in the industry, in the Bitcoin only industry, is like, I mean, Jack Mallers just like cussing in his keynotes and stuff. It's like some people find it distasteful. I find it like that's a bro. He's 28 years old. He's a couple years older than me. Like I don't mind it. I think it's cool that he not cool that he cusses, but like cool that like he's being who he is. So so a little more down let's get off the Swan stuff and talk about you specifically, what you kind of brought it up a little bit, but your lifestyle's been on the chopping block lately from mainstream media, it seems. They're attacking the bare feet, they're attacking the sun lovers, and you are what do you describe yourself as? A sun maximalist, outdoor maximalist?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely a sun maximalist. I'm a walking maximalist. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I find the things in my life that give me like asymmetric benefit, and like I go all in on those things. I've always been that way, like far before Bitcoin. But yeah, no, I mean, I've been, the New York Times is coming at me. They're telling people how to get no sun this summer. You got Time Magazine, like keep your shoes on, idiot.
Shout out to Stop the
Stop the
Presses.
presses, man. You got to stop the presses. New York Times up. But yeah, I mean, but it's, it's not the New York Times though. I mean, it's emblematic of we live in a culture where it's like sun phobia, right? And it's not just sun phobia, right? Like we've just become so detached, like we've become so disassociated, I think, from the natural world. And I don't say that as like a hippie, like environmentalist take, like, oh, like, man, we need to be connected with nature. Like, that's fine. But like, I'm not saying it like, oh, we need to be connected with nature. I'm saying it that like our biology evolved over millions of years in response to a very specific environment. And if you think that you can just like completely overhaul that in 100 years and not suffer ramifications, like, well, I heavily disagree with you, right? Like there are certain things that we just can't change. And, like Michael Saylor, like there is no second best sunlight. There is no second best, like there is no alternative. And like, there's no bulb which mimics it. There's no light that does all of the potential, all of the benefits. Like even sunlight through a window, like is blocking critical spectrums. And like far from like, a lot of people might hear this and be like, what do you mean fucking light? What do you mean? Why does light matter? Like, why does sunlight matter? Right. So your body, like every single cell, every single organ, every single process in your body either has clock genes or is regulated by timing mechanisms. And so there's a part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this like governs global rhythms. And like science, and I don't mean like crazy lunatics, like I mean like you can go on Mayo Clinic, you can go on like very like mainstream publications, universities, research centers, and you can find like they're discovering diseases as diverse as like diabetes are actually heavily related to circadian disruptions. They're actually like related to sunlight, broadly speaking. Alzheimer's, like cardiovascular disease, like we like everyone on like in like the health world, right? Like everyone's like trying to explain why modernity deals with so many chronic illnesses. Like everyone's like, oh, hey, like, there's been this huge spike in chronic illnesses. Is it the seed oils? Is it the sugar? Is it the xenoestrogens? What are we not exercising? And I'm sure all those things can like play a role. Like, but like the bottom line is like we do experience like a sudden uptick in a number of these conditions. And what we do know for sure is that they're almost all circadian linked. So like why does light matter? Like light is actually critical. Like your entire system has evolved under the 24-hour like light dark cycle. And you disrupt that even short term, and it's you can see measurable differences.
Interesting. See, I want to get on board with you, but you can't really tell in my poor lighting, but I'm pasty as a MF. And I can mow the yard and be burnt to a crisp, so need to maybe work on eliminating more of the seed oils. I think that's a thing, but no, I do like I've actually like I've never attributed it to being outside, but like on really pretty days, I'll take my laptop outside and do my work, and it's like enjoyable.
Steven,
go ahead.
Do you adjust your workday seasonally then to account for circadian rhythms?
No, not really. Like so there's two things, right? So at night, basically red spectrum light does not disrupt circadian rhythms. So like I still use like screens and stuff like once the sun goes down, but I redshift everything. So like you come in my house at night, it's like literally everything is red. The lights are red, the screens are red. Like it's crazy. You get used to it, but it's also phenomenal. So like, I mean, I live in Florida too. So like the sun never sets that early here. Like I think at the worst it's like 7 p.m. So it's not too bad, but I do, I get your question. And like, I just redshift stuff, and that's basically the move on like the darkness side is as long as you're not exposing yourself to, you'd call it like blue light, like essentially, but like a white light has blue light in it, like most yellow lights have blue light in it. Like that's the thing that is really detrimental. And like you can see it, like Apple has a blue light thing on their phone now, like to some degree, like people like understand this. But I do a redshift at night.
Yeah, I remember Jack Dorsey posted a picture of his bedroom for some reason on Nostr, and it just was like red. And
he's into all this stuff, man.
Oh yeah,
I've never like spoken to him directly, but like I know the culture and I know like the sphere that this sort of view comes from. And like, he has grounding shoes and he has red lights at night. Like he's in this whole thing.
Yeah, and that's when I started realizing, like, yeah, you have like night shift and stuff where it takes out the blue light, like you said, but there's
that does
so much
fuck
more.
All if you have like the lights, but like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't do anything if you redshift your phone, but like you've got a white light on in your bathroom. Like
so.
Real quick, sorry though. So a large amount of the benefits are seeing light. So even if you're like highly sensitive to burning, like we could talk about that because there's some reason. Like I'm Fitzpatrick type 2 skin, which if you don't know what that means, it's basically like blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm super white, like I'm tan now, but like naturally, like if I wasn't out, like super pale skin. Like the only thing lower than Fitzpatrick type 2 is Fitzpatrick 1, which is red hair, green eyes, like, so it's like, it's not there are things which influence that, including your circadian rhythm. So your skin has one, and that influences if you tan or not to some degrees, but I'm not trying to, we can maybe go down that later, but a lot of the benefits are seeing it. So even if for whatever reason now, like, you burn, just going outside and taking your glasses off and like seeing the sun, that's going to get you like a huge amount of the benefit.
Interesting. Yeah, we definitely need to maybe not now because I have other topics, but like I want to deep dive down this rabbit hole.
Let's do it.
Dude, I'm gonna go outside after this too. But so
my DMs are flooded now. Like every day, man, I have a message. I'm like, dude, like I didn't know what you were talking about, but I started like walking 10K steps in the sun, and like I feel like a new person. I'm like, yeah.
It's almost like I was right. Still on that topic, like you said, the barefoot was a subset, and that's one of the things that I've been seeing on Twitter a lot lately because they were talking about like you should always wear shoes or something like that. I can't even remember. It was so stupid. But what does that have to do with what you're talking about? Like, because one thing that I think of, I have plantar fasciitis. It runs in my family. So if I'm barefoot for long periods of time, it feels like I have knives digging into my feet. But like, what benefits does the barefoot have to it? Is it just kind of like an enjoyable thing? Like, what's the deal there?
Yeah. So the way to think of this, and like, so force is the language of cells. The way that you send information to cells, to tissues, is force. That's what they're responding to. And so that's why like working out works. Like, you lift some weights and like there's force inputs and your tissues adapt, right? Every single tissue in your body, every joint structure, tendons, ligaments, they're all adaptive tissues. And like, years ago in a past life, I was certified. I did the full like functional range condition systems. This is a system that's now used by like 50 pro sports organizations, the Lakers, like when you go into the major leagues, like they're using this system now. It was developed by this guy, Dr. Andrea Spina. Like I got certified. So like I actually have like some formal background in this. But so force is the language of cells. Every tissue, every joint, every ligament, like they're all gonna adapt and change depending on the force inputs. So basically two things happen. Like if you stop sending those force signals, your body basically gets the message like, oh, I don't need to do this. Like, you're not asking me to do this, and it will change. So like, why does barefoot matter? Like, imagine going through your whole life with gloves on your hands, like a kitchen mitt. Like, your hands are going to change, right? You're not using them in the same way. And like, nobody does that because our society is so like, hand centric. But the same thing happens with your feet, right? Like, you put them in shoes and there's just so much, like, there's two things, right? Like, your toes can't spread. There's like a kind of a narrowing. And then if you're using like a lot of arch support, or you're using like, you're basically taking the load off the structure of the foot. And like, your foot will deteriorate, but the body is adaptive and like, it can change relatively quickly. So even if you have issues like plantar fasciitis or like some of these other things, like, those generally emerge from, a basic formula: too much load is being placed on that joint than it is prepared to handle. So you can either reduce the load that's being placed on it, which a lot of people do by like not walking or whatever, or like stopping doing certain exercises or not running, or you can strengthen the local structure and you can strengthen the foot. So the reason you do it, and like, if you're dealing with certain like foot stuff, like, you do it to tolerance, right? Like, you don't need to have yourself in agony, but like, you start gradually increasing the demand that you're putting on the foot, on that structure, and it starts to get stronger. So that's part of it. It's like the biomechanics. And that article from Times, like, it was ridiculous because they're saying like, being barefoot might be bad for the biomechanics of your feet. And like, that's insanity, because like, how did we get here? Like, what are you saying? Like, evolution made the structure that requires a shoe? Like, this is incoherent. Like, in terms of like support and stuff, like, sure, people wore moccasins to not step on pointy shit, but like, that's a different story. That's part of it. And then the other reason, so Jack Dorsey, when he tweets on Noster, well, he's doing it, probably for that reason, but also for something called grounding. And so this sounds like total hippie stuff, but it's like, I can send you papers. I can send you like a large amount of papers. When you stand on the earth barefoot or with a conductive surface, so you could like leather, or certain natural fibers, cotton, like those will conduct too, so that's fine. You don't have to be barefoot if you're wearing leather or something. There's actually an electron exchange. So electrons from the earth basically like literally like go through the body, and they've studied this and found like global decreases in inflammation. Literally blood becomes less viscous, so it becomes like thinner, like more able to flow. And so like a lot of like cardiovascular disease and a lot of these other things are like, essentially like they're obstructive diseases. And they've actually found that, somebody does grounding for 30 minutes or whatever, and like the blood literally flows easier. It's like, it sounds like made up. It sounds like hippie stuff, but it's like, the evidence is there. It's crazy.
I knew about like the electric side of things because I used to do like I studied electrical engineering for a little bit, and by that
Awesome.
I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and wanted to change my degree but didn't. So that's what I call studying. But like with that, I did learn about like I thought it was fake whenever they were talking about like literally standing on somewhere if you have like a current going through you or something like that. But then I realized, I was like, oh no, it makes sense. But I had no idea that it has any effect on like bodily functions and stuff like that. That's crazy.
It does. The body is astonishingly more electromagnetic than conventional thought. Like, there are, at a basic level, like, you probably heard of like ATP, right? Like mitochondria produce ATP. It's like basic energy for the body. Well, they do that through something called the electron transport chain. So like, part of the way it's happening, like, there is a process where your cells and your organelles within your cells are just passing electrons. Like, at a really basic level, there's electrons that are being moved. And there are things you can do which like facilitate that process or impair that process. And you can think of it as like a really core building block that like these larger structures get built on top of. One of the craziest things I ever learned was, so the mitochondria, like when it's producing ATP, what it literally is, it's a rotary motor. It literally has a rotary motor that spins 9,000 rotations per minute. It's this incredibly efficient rotary motor. So here's a crazy thing. I'm gonna, like, this will blow your mind. But so when infrared light, so sun, infrared light's heat. So, I mean, you get infrared, like the table's emitting infrared light at me right now, just in like low quantities. But you go out in the sun, there's a lot of it. So infrared light can penetrate your body up to 6 inches. So like when it's striking me, I mean, it's going through me. It's hitting my organs. It's hitting the interior of my body, my brain. This is one way. There's something called like photobio PBM. It's a sort of therapy where they'll shine like a laser or like an intense light on parts of your body, and it'll produce like biological effects. They can like do like literally mental illness. They'll shine a really intense laser on your skull and it'll improve a certain mental illnesses.
Need that.
It's crazy. But one of the mechanisms, right? So like infrared light is penetrating. It's actually going inside your body. It's affecting things. And what it does inside the cells and inside the mitochondria specifically is the infrared light comes through and it actually structures the water within the cell. And it becomes less viscous again. So think you have this rotary motor that's spinning, and now imagine it's spinning through oil or sludge, or it's spinning through water. As the water gets less viscous, the motor is able to spin more efficiently. And so like as the infrared light from the sun strikes your body, it actually upregulates your mitochondria's ability to produce energy.
Dude, this is like crazy stuff. Like I could listen to like, I mean, I literally am about to go spend just like an hour outside after this, just because like
Hell yeah.
I need to get a kickstart on what I need to do some catching up. But
We'll make our meeting later a walking meeting, Taylor.
yeah, that'd be
In honor
good.
of Steven.
This
Look.
is how we win, man.
Right.
This is how we win.
The New York Times
The
hates
mode,
this man. But no, that's freaking awesome. We definitely could go long time talking about this. Well, okay, getting back to some more boring stuff. I did want to bring up just kind of like some current events.
Yeah.
And of course, here we come with Binance and Coinbase. Obviously, this week we've seen the complaints, lawsuits come from the SEC, and it seems like right now CZ and Brian are treading water with weights on their ankles. There's a lot of what happens next going on, and so my question to you is, what do you think happens next, and do you think that this is a net good or net bad for the industry? And I know I always like to say this because I know that Bitcoin DGAF, but in a sense, the entire crypto industry, I think, does have, and what happens to Bitcoin from like the pretty side, like the price and stuff like that, I think that does have effect on people who are not as
Sure.
convicted or anything like that. So
100%.
do you think that what is happening right now is a net good or net bad for Bitcoin as a single entity? And do you think, like, just what are your thoughts on what comes next?
Yeah. So let's piece it apart because there's a lot there. So first of all, Coinbase and Binance, very different things.
Right.
Like those lawsuits, like on the surface, while they look similar, are not at all similar.
I think it was really like timing and just like
Yeah. Like there's
entities.
security
They're- yeah.
allegations in both of them, but so let's talk about them each independently. So the Binance lawsuit, I think, could go much faster and could have a lot more fireworks, right? Why? They're accusing CZ of like legitimately illegal stuff, of like, you know, taking customer funds and like basically Alameda. If that's what happened, I don't know. None of us know. It's a black box, right? But that's what they're saying. if that's the case, well, that opens up Pandora's box. Did they take losses trading? Is there a hole in the balance sheet? Are they going to get like all these assets frozen? Like, at what speed does the trial take place? They could go much faster. So the Binance lawsuit could be, you know, pretty substantial for them and pretty impactful. The Coinbase lawsuit is going to drag out for years. That is not at all going fast. They're going to fight it, and it's all about what is a security. And they've got a ton of money. They probably have more money than the SEC, to be honest. Like, they've got a ton of money. They're going to, like, people are going to rally. The SEC is resource constrained. They're going to fight it in courts. That's going to go on forever.
And let me pause you right there. Yeah. Do you think that them being a publicly traded company is going to have any effect on, like, maybe helping them or hurting them, or like helping them as in like, hey, we've, you know, done all this to be publicly traded or whatever, or hurting them as in like, let's take a closer look at your financials? Like, is that going to have any effect?
I think it'll help them, to be honest. Like, you know, if they were like some private company that no one really knew too well, that would definitely put them in a less strong position. And like, closer look at their financials. I mean, they're a public company. Like, there's already,
I mean, there are people that are like digging into it.
Yeah, and yeah, maybe they find something. I don't personally think they do, to be honest. I
wouldn't
think
expect
Coinbase is like doing like Alameda stuff or something, right? Like, it's out in the open. The question is, what is the status of what they're selling, and what is the like regulation around that, right? Like, I'd be surprised if they were like doing crazy stuff, right? The crazy stuff they're doing is listing poop coin. Like, I think that actually happened. It might have just been on their watch list, but, and I mean, like, let's be clear, like, I have friends who worked at Coinbase, right? I have friends that were in the legal team. I have friends that, like, man, I mean, they've really had a blunder after blunder, right? Remember their NFT marketplace?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Did that ever actually launch?
Yeah,
I thought it launched like 5 times.
And they blew so much money on it.
It was expensive.
Like, they just don't seem to know what to do, you know. So it's yeah, there are plenty of problems there, but you know, but yeah, but you know, they're a public company, and like the crypto industry is going to rally again around them, and they're going to fight this tooth and nail in court, and it's going to be a big deal. And the SEC really doesn't have that much resources. I mean, even the Ripple lawsuit was taking up, they only have so many lawyers, and these companies really fight. So, you know, what is actually going to come of that, right? Like, what's going to come in that is there's obviously going to be a slowdown in like willingness to fund crypto companies in US capital markets. It's hard to imagine, unless there's some like really positive quick resolution, that doesn't happen. And so, like, you know, is this good or bad for Bitcoin? You're asking, like, how does this, I mean, let's be frank, right, man? Like, if Binance and Coinbase over the next 24 hours completely shut down and like everyone lost all their money, or even if they didn't lose all their money and all the funds got, like, yeah, that would be bad for the price of Bitcoin, right? Like, if there was this like sudden massive disruption to these core trading platforms, like, let's not pretend, you know, but that's not what's going to happen. Like, unless Binance is like, you know, really doing illegal shit, like, okay, maybe then, like, Coinbase is not going to shut down in the next period of time, right? So that's not the scenario we're looking at. Like, we're, you know, like, realistically, Binance probably like pays a bunch of fees, maybe CZ is out, and they go overseas, like, unless there's really some terrible stuff. But, you know, realistically, that's probably like highest probability what happens. And so, you know, so it continues on in like a wounded way. It's like slowed down. So like, that's just not the scenario we're looking at. We're not looking at this like Armageddon scenario that like, I agree, would like impact Bitcoin. But, you know, instead, I think what could be possible, and, you know, there's reasons this might not happen, but like, I'm inclined to believe this is what happens. Bitcoin, so I believe that currently $2 out of every $100 that gets invested into crypto on a VC basis goes to Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is getting 2% of the money that's funding the broad like industry. And so as a result of this, could that number double? Absolutely. Could it triple? Yeah, I think so. Could it quadruple? I think that's likely. Could it go to 10%, like 15%? I think that's all reasonable, right? So like Bitcoin's at such a like a low part of that, you know, even if it only becomes 10% of it and like crypto funding keeps going and still most of the money goes to altcoins, well, that's a huge win. Like that's a huge win.
It sounds like dominance would just increase over time.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think there's a big opportunity for Bitcoin only companies here. And I think, you know, Corey feels this way and the company feels this way. Where while these firms are kind of like entangled in this legal boondoggle, like there's an opportunity for Bitcoin only companies to kind of run hard and run fast, and like they don't have the same regulatory challenges. Like we do not sell securities. Like we do not, you know, we like, you know, unless you're going to come call Bitcoin a security, which they're not going to do, like the SEC has no business here. And so that will make investors more confident. That will make funding more available. That will make, there's this kind of opportunity. And I think if Bitcoin only companies like run fast and run hard in this moment, I think it's an opportunity. And I think it's also going to show people the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. And because I that's still not understood. Like,
yeah, that's what I was thinking
don't get
about is
that.
like all of this. The only reason that we're having this conversation right here is because like mainstream Bitcoin and crypto are the same thing. Like
Yes.
Coinbase sells Bitcoin, it also sells crypto. Binance sells Bitcoin, it also sells crypto. And it's like we need a hard like we need the CEO of Bitcoin to not let them list Bitcoin on these other exchanges. But yeah, it's just not understood right now.
No, it's not. But I think this is a doorway where that might increase. And so I do think it could be positive, right? Like I do think it could be positive, like barring like Armageddon liquidity constraints and just like the total shutdown, like, you know, like that would obviously drive the price down. But even then, like you're going to see Bitcoin only companies, there'll be growing pains and scaling challenges, but they'll rush in and like they will build out that infrastructure, right? So, you know, I just see this as an opportunity for, you know, in many ways, like, right, like regardless of what the outcome of this is and like all the debate, like this is an outcome that the Bitcoin camp has predicted for a while. Like Bitcoiners have said, hey, the SEC is going to come for you, Coinbase. The SEC is going to come for you, cryptos. And so regardless of what happens here, or if it's right or wrong or whatever, like it happened.
Right.
And like this is an opportunity, I think, to demonstrate the difference and to be able to say, hey, we said this would happen. Bitcoin's not included. Come take a second look. Like, come look at this.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, over the past couple of months, even, we've seen a lot of maxis be born from all
Yeah.
this other stuff that's happened, and I think we're continuing to see that. And I really love whenever something like this. Well, okay, well, hold on. I don't love whenever people lose a lot of money or
Sure.
anything like that, but like after FTX, you saw a ton of companies that had like exposure and were heavily in all that, like start freaking out. Hey, everything's fine. We think. I don't know. And then you had the Bitcoin only companies. They're like, let's give everyone a discount code FTX for 50% off our product. It's like
Yeah.
let's go, dude. Like here we go. We're still here eating some popcorn.
Yeah.
And I really like how, because I'll be honest, I had a weird elongated journey to maximalism, and it once I declared myself a maxi only Bitcoin only, I would still see something like that and be like, oh my gosh, did I make the right choice? Like I don't know what the right one was to pick, but I picked Bitcoin. But now it's like I've developed so much that it's like, let's stack some sats, and oh, let me check the mempool. Yep, they're still blocks are still going. Like, and I know that like that's on a Bitcoin to protocol level and everything, which I think is a feature to it as an asset, but uh, outsiders don't necessarily see that as it is right now, and maybe this is where we kind of start to see them migrating over. So I'm nervously hopeful, I guess you could say, would be a good. I also just don't like the bickering on Twitter and stuff. Like,
Mm.
y'all stop. Go outside and walk.
I agree.
Before we round out our last two questions, Carl, do you have any quick things to ask him or
Sure.
anything on your
So
mind?
yeah, one thing that occurred to me, Stephen, was one of the criticisms I've seen on Bitcoin Twitter with all the junk going down the last couple of days is, oh, Swan employs bloggers, like that was an accusation. But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the interesting thing about it was when you're talking, I'm almost hearing that as way more of an asset. Like Swan provides education for their customers, and that increases stickiness with those customers and their long-term financial health benefits because of it. So I thought that was an interesting um, little insight there into Swan.
Absolutely. Right. So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So, first of all, let me just say we have a huge engineering team. We're about to launch our own multi-sig into the market. We've, built that
Mm.
out. We've built a platform that can plug into any custodial trading stack. We've built software, we've built products, we've built financial products. We have so many irons in the fire right now. So the idea that like Swan is just content creators, like it's just like on face value false.
Hmm.
Now, like is content like a core part of our strategy, and like is education important? Absolutely. Like this idea that the only people who are valid are like engineers or people who are like writing code or building like that's just not true. That's not how the world works, right?
Right.
Like you can't just like build a product and then just like sit there, right? It's like people won't understand it, they won't use it, they won't understand why they should use it, right? And like Bitcoin's the product, like the product's been built. Like we need to, I'm not saying there's not more to do, and there's not like there's obviously stuff to do. I'm not like saying like just sit back and like, make everyone buy, layer one Bitcoin. But like there is a product, it's Bitcoin. It's our job to make people understand why it's important and why it matters. Like almost nobody gets Bitcoin right now. There's so much
Hmm.
work to be done. You need to educate people, you need to bring people in, and the way you do that is not with a new app, like, unless it's like a really groundbreaking iteration. But let's be real freaking clear here, there's a lot of money that's flowed through everything. Let's talk about crypto for a second. How many billions of dollars of product were built, and how many daily active users do they have, right? How much money, how much was built? Like obviously, like that ain't it, bro. Like that didn't work.
Mm.
There's more to the story. It's about what you build, it's about how you communicate around it, it's about, this whole space. And, so yeah, it is important to educate, it is important to create content that's valuable. And that's not like all of what Swan does. Like our company is over 100 people right now. Like we're not all fucking podcasters. Like most of us aren't, like most of us aren't.
That's yeah. I do appreciate that. I know we're coming up on the hour, and it looks like you need to bounce out of here. Real quick though, one last question for a quick answer. Um, this is how I'd like to round it all out. If you had to put your entire, this is a hard one sometimes. If you had to put your entire Bitcoin philosophy into a tweet, what would that tweet be? Why are you still here? Why do you keep telling yourself that this was the right thing to do? What's that driving philosophy?
The most valuable thing that I ever got from being involved in Bitcoin these years, I don't say this to be like corny or whatever. It was the community. Like it was literally like the people I've met. I am always like stunned by the gap in perception between like criticisms of the Bitcoin community and like how it's portrayed and like the actual human beings that I meet in real life and online. Because the Bitcoiners that I meet are incredible, like incredible people. Like they're intelligent and they have diverse interests and they're not afraid to think for themselves. And like, you know, like there's like, oh, like groupthink, maxi, whatever, like don't think for yourself. Oh, like, what do you mean you guys are free thinkers? You all just like, you know, stay humble and stack sats, like dogma. But like, A, that's not true. But B, like, I know it's not true and the inverse is true. I know that like Bitcoiners really are passionate about the truth and about thinking for themselves, because when I meet Bitcoiners, they have interests that are incredibly diverse and broad, and they have interests that span like a variety of fields, and they, you know, relate to the world in certain ways. And so I see that there. I don't need to look to their views on Bitcoin because I can see it playing out everywhere. And so like, just the people, like there's no bar, there's no city, like I could walk around New York City bars or go to events for a decade and not meet like, you know, a tenth as many people as I've met being involved in this space that strike me as just being so free thinking and fearless and independent and interesting and intelligent. Like I feel so truly blessed to know all of these people, because there's like no way I like it. Just Bitcoin sorts for certain traits and values and like concentrates people with those traits and values. And there's just no other way, right? And we've seen that magic play out with Swan, where like every single person we hire is like a dedicated Bitcoiner. Like we don't hire like just because somebody has like a good resume or whatever and did something. Like if they're not a Bitcoiner, like they don't get hired. Like it's just the bottom line. Like it's the culture. And like, but it has just allowed us to get like the most incredible people in one place. Like it's like I like literally like, I don't say this to like pump up the Bitcoin community or like play to a fan base or like shill Swan. It just like legitimately is my experience. And you know, when I look at, you know, what have I gotten from being engaged in this way, like it's not a financial reward. It's not a chance to like, you know, do something, whatever, a platform. It's just literally like the people I've met. It's been incredible.
Wholeheartedly
That was a Nick Carter length tweet.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a long tweet. I'm not reading all that. No, like I had the same sentiment after Miami, where it's like I go to the conference and I see these people who I've maybe met once before IRL. I talk to them on Twitter all the time. We'll see each other in video calls sometimes. Some of the people, I saw their face for the first time in Miami. But like, I always went for the handshake, but every single one went for the hug. And I'm like, dude, like, the community is, I hate saying community because that was always such a big buzzword for the Web3 bull run. And it's like, we're doing this for the shut up. But seriously, like I've made a post recently. It was like some of my closest friends I've met a couple times in real life at Bitcoin conventions and stuff, but I'd literally do anything for them, and it's amazing. Well,
and I will, let me add one more thing. And like, I'm just going to speak from my own experience anecdotally. This is just what I've seen. Doesn't speak for everybody. I know a lot of crypto people. Like I know a lot of like, I know people that did ICOs. I know people that built blockchains. I know people that like were very, very in the crypto world. And like, in my experience, the people I've met on average are completely different. They are completely different than Bitcoiners. They are generally depressed. They are generally unhappy. They are generally like, and that's I'm not criticizing anyone for their struggles. Like, but I say that maybe not like, maybe I'm not saying like depression, but like ennui, like like there's a meaninglessness that pervades their life. There is a lack of purpose. There is a deep hollowness that I have generally encountered. I've met a ton of grifters. And when I say grifters, I don't mean like they issued a token or built a blockchain and Steven's calling them. I mean like literally like they were stealing from people. Like I've met a ton of these people. Not everybody, like in this overt way, like, but I've met a ton of them. I haven't had that experience in the Bitcoin community. The crypto people I know, for the most part, are incredibly nihilistic. They're incredibly nihilistic, and it's sad. It's it's.
No, I get what you're saying too. Like I've seen that.
Well, the biggest way to win in crypto is when someone else loses. It's all about dumping bags. So there's going to be, people who avoid that are going to be avoiding it for certain reasons that are values that are close to them, and people who embrace it are going to be people who ignore those values to a certain degree.
Yeah, and there's a culture of hedonism too. Like there's a culture of like the parties and the drinking and the cocaine and the like there's a culture of hedonism. There's a culture of nihilistic hedonism. And if that's your value set and that's how you see the world and that's how you engage like viscerally in life, then it doesn't fucking matter. Build a fucking dog coin. Everything's like postmodern anyways, bro. Like it's fucking, their values don't exist. It's all constructed. It's all social constructivism. Like, haven't you ever read like your postmodern theorists? Then of course it doesn't matter like what really is the difference between like a Dogecoin and a this. Why not just let's just leverage it up? I mean, if people want to leverage up 100x, who am I to say it's bad? I can't say what is good or bad. They told us that's just constructed. Like we can't place moral judgments on anything. So just if people want to do something, then they should be able to do something, right? Like this is the underlying ideological structure. Like it's broad in society, but like no one's willing to just be like, this thing is wrong and I don't give a fuck if you disagree. Like 100x leverage is bad for markets. It's bad for you. It's bad for people. Like, I don't care if you want it. 6-year-olds want to eat sugar for every meal. That doesn't mean like they should eat sugar for every meal. Like addicts want to do drugs all the time. That doesn't mean they should do drugs all the time. And so I'm not saying like I'm the moral authority and like I get to decide, but if your worldview is that there is no morality and there is no moral authority, and the only thing we can pay credence to is like human wannas, like I wanna, then like your shit's empty, bro. Like there's a gaping hole in the center of your existence.
That was almost a Max Kaiser level on Between Two Asics rant. I love it. By the way, I'm also going to clip that part where you're like, I don't give a f-. I'm going to clip that, and that's going to be a reaction. So,
hell yeah.
All right. Well, to round us out, give us a quick shill. Where can we find you? Give people tips on walking and Swan, whatever. Shill whatever you want to shill.
Yeah,
except
man.
For shitcoins.
So Twitter, Steven Lubka, Lubka. You can't spell my app, so just look at my name. And run the private wealth team for Swan. DMs are open. I'm incredibly responsive on Twitter. I try to respond to literally everybody for the most part. Like just hit me up. If you're interested in Swan, you know where to find me. Get outside, see the sunrise or see the sun within an hour and a half of the sunrise. Walk more. Do what you can. It's what you said. Like, if you have a remote job, there's no rule that says you have to work inside. Like, go work under the shade in your patio or something. Like, take a walking meeting. Send some emails from your fucking phone. Get out of the box a little bit. Like, you'll feel better.
Sweet, dude. I really appreciate thewish.com Corey Clipson coming on the podcast today. I'm sorry, I had to That was rude. I'm sorry. But no, seriously, thanks so much. Great conversations, great rabbit holes that I'm about to start going down to.
I got studies for you, man. Hit me up for the papers.
I'm definitely going to follow up with you on some of this stuff. But yeah, thanks for joining us. Everyone, thanks for watching. Thank you to our sponsors. And we will see you next time.
Oh, shit.